you are. I got
Okay,
you.
cool. Right on. Can you hear me okay?
I got you, Joe.
Right on, man. Hey, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, before we get into your life, very interesting ride you've had. I'm curious, how did you survive COVID? It all worked on us in its own way. It
Mhm,
was 3 years that just changed so much for us and the world. How did
mhm.
you get through it? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Well, I mean, my core businesses, I have several businesses, but my core business is two martial arts schools. And when COVID hit, we had 1,000 students. We immediately dropped down to 750. But within a week, we were running virtual. So we got into Zoom. We were running classes all over the world at one point. And in 2021, we did 1.2 million virtually.
Wow.
Yeah. So virtual became a big platform for us. As soon as we could get into parking lots and parks, we were out you know, in the parking lot of a library teaching. So we were able to pivot effectively. And then, of course, we run our businesses pretty tight and right on paper. So we got like 600,000 in government money, which we never had to pay back, in PPP and ERCs. I even got a $5,000 Facebook grant and $1,500 in ad spend. So we were mining the data, even though there was so many unknown variables, we turned over every rock. And today we're good. I mean, we're still about 70,000 in back rent and things like that, but it's all manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talk to me a little bit about you're very busy. I want to get to the heart and soul of what you do.
Mhm.
I'm going to hypothetically put you in front of a career day, third graders at a grade school, and one of the kids looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I help people, teams, companies, organizations live their best life.
So, how do you explain what you do to me?
Well, I mean, whether it's working with you one on one as a mentor or coming into Meta, where I did a talk on global leadership post pandemic, or walking into Stanford Healthcare and refusing into their purpose some real meaning instead of something that just sat up on a wall, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I do. So I'm a thinker. I mean, I grew up without computers, I grew up without cell phones or the internet. So critical thinking has always been a big part of my nature and my habit in my life. So the ability to come into an environment and innately or intuitively offer them um, good advice, for the lack of a better word, it's what I do.
And we all need it. And I would think now in this world that we live in, we need it more than ever.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
so let me ask you this. When you were in the third grade, what was your dream? What was your vision for your life?
God, in third grade, it was survival. I grew up on welfare and food stamps that were my dad's suit to graduation in high school. Money was short. Money was very short for us. It was more survivalistic than anything. Where are we going to get our next meal? Make sure they don't turn off the electricity. My dad was a single dad raising four kids.
Wow.
So, it was kind of like Lord of the Flies, man. It was every person for themselves. We just kind of figured this thing out. My dad was lost. He hadn't accumulated any kind of financial wealth yet. So it was just the blind leading the blind,
Do you
so.
think that background lent to you running so hard and becoming who you are today?
Absolutely. And my father was an immigrant from a third world country, couldn't speak English with a third grade education. But the one thing he said was nobody could outwork me. Now I work smart, but I work hard. And I enjoy hard work, doesn't stress me out. I think anxiety, depression, chemical dependency, different things like that tends to manifest itself out of stressors, right? And there's so many variables when we talk about stress and how people process stress. And for me, stress is just like drinking a glass of water. It's neither here nor there. It's just simply part of the day. And our ability to manage that, I think, is crucial. Like my wife said to me, I came home one night in April in 2020. I said, "Babe, you're not worried about any of this?" She goes, "No, you got this." And it's because she had, over a decade of data that I do got this. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
What were some of the other things from your childhood that were seeds, key parts of you being a critical thinker, being somebody that wants to help other people? How did that happen?
Well, the one thing, my grandma was a huge impact of that. She owned little coffee shops in the Tenderloin. And whether you could pay or not, if you sat at that counter and you ordered something, she fed you. And I thought that was amazing that this little old lady who was a widow brought seven kids over from the Philippines and helped them all buy homes and do all that. And I was always, amazed by that. that when you can take nothing and make something out of it, that's really inspiring. Really inspiring. And again, we were very self-sufficient. Me and my sisters raised ourselves. My dad worked a 9 to 5. We had a karate school at night. So it was up to me and my sisters to do the wash, clean the house, make dinner. And that was so at a very young age, we were taught to be resourceful. We were by default, we were critical thinkers. And having I spent 11 months until about almost 5 year, the year being in a foster home with my older sister. So it was that survival has always been there, just because the climates we were put in.
It's interesting talking about critical thought. I think about, in this modern day and era, kids were like, what did people do without TV and phones and technology? It's like there was innovation. There was things that happened that were pretty magnanimous. I mean, I remember when I went to Rome and I looked around and saw the architecture and all of the ways that they urban planned that place. It's like this is what happens when you're not distracted. There's levels of ingenuity. There's Da Vinci's that are born that do things with both hands and things like that. Like there's genuinely things that completely can be organically made into things that we all use when we aren't distracted by all these other things.
Well, and I think it's there. That's the yin and the yang. And that's why in today's culture, they're trying to put, curfews on social media for kids. They're finding the levels of depression and anxiety, body shaming, all of that because they're distracted simply by so they're trying to pick up chicks at Harvard, right? Never knew Facebook was going to be the beast it became. They just were a bunch of geeks in Harvard wanting to meet girls.
Yeah.
And they're all taking a step back going, we need to be accountable here. So it doesn't surprise me. Zuckerberg, Gates, all these guys are going, hey, let's slow down this AI thing, right? Let's just take a step back here. We know it can really help us, but it's extremely harmful too when 200,000 potential truck drivers could lose their jobs because some autonomous truck can drive for them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're not going to retrain a 55-year-old truck driver that's been driving his whole life.
Right.
So they're talking about potential levels of, what we saw in a depression back in the 20s if stuff like this cultivates. So there needs to be a balance in there. And I think people are starting to see that. You don't need a smartphone to teach you you're smart. You don't need a Fitbit to teach you you're fit. I think real ingenuity, real critical thinking comes out of knowing thyself. Right,
Yeah.
Joe? But I think what's happening in today's culture, we have this very false sense of entitlement because we don't do the work. I can just look at my phone and go, hey, give me this. And all of a sudden I'm an authority on it. No, I'm not. It's only through learned experience and trial and error and falling down and getting up can I say with all truth and conviction, this works, this doesn't. I'm
Yeah.
just going to read some data. Well, data says, data by itself can be fudged. We know that. I
Yeah.
mean, they say people distrust the internet more than everything now. It's a huge percentage. It's because you can fabricate anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, where does it come from? It's like, I remember the morning I was listening to NPR, the morning report. God, what was his name? Carl Castle. And he was getting ready to retire. And they said, what's the most important thing you learned over all these years? Like 40, 50 years as a reporter. He was like, I always found an extra source. I never reported until I had multiple corroborating sources. And I found it very interesting. Sometimes when you hear those sage people throw out very simple things like that, it makes complete sense because it's true. You just want it all to be verified. And now it's the Wild West. People put things out. We know that things are fabricated, that who's the source? Who says that? Whenever the news says they, who the hell is they? What are you talking about? You know?
Right. I agree with Joe. But if they do this every day, all the time, this becomes an interface. Pretty soon, this becomes their truth. This becomes their reality. So
Yeah.
they take whatever's there at face value and they find truth in it because it's what they live every day.
Uh-huh.
Right. That habit, that habit. I don't know how many times they say 1,000 times in a given day, someone looks into their cell phone, right? Just walk through an airport. I just got back from Boston. I was speaking out on the East Coast and, I walked through the airport and that's all you see. Everyone's
Uh-huh.
just staring into it's like an addiction. And they've proven it. It is an addiction because
Yeah.
it drops, every time you get a view or a like or a comment, those endorphins drop, and there you are. You're down that rabbit hole. It is another form of addiction. So I think as much as data is brilliant, I love running an article. I write through, AI to make spell check corrections. But sometimes, like when you write a magazine article, you need conversational. Well, that's not
Yeah.
grammatically correct. It's irrelevant if it's grammatically correct. It's impactful because
Right.
flaws and all. It's like rock and roll, man. Rock and roll. I played music for years. Mitch Jagger sang off key all the time.
Yeah,
But you know what? It's the way he sang that made the Rolling Stones the Rolling Stones, right?
absolutely.
So there's something beautiful about being imperfect. And as humans, we need that.
Absolutely, we do. There's a video that Moe put out about 4 or 5 years ago. It was kind of a cartoonish video, and everybody's on a cell phone. It's so weird and creepy, like, and it's all of these, like, weird, like, animal creatures, and they're just all on their phones, falling into manholes, just chaos, but no one looks up, and it trips your brain out because 'cause you're like, there's not one person in the whole video that's not looking at a phone, and you're just like, "Oh my god, what happened?" And it's happening. It's right now. It's all the time.
It is, and the huge disconnect it creates in families and cultures, and
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And had that debate with somebody. I said, imagine if J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter through Chat GPT,
Uh,
and is only entitled. And I'm going to say this. Can I say this? I wrote this, that the problem with today's millennials and Z's is they believe they're entitled to an opinion they haven't earned yet. And this cat said to me, "Hey, man, well, then she would have written 30 volumes." And I said, "What? She wrote those books while she was homeless in a car.
uh-huh.
The iconic characters of Dumbledore and Harry Potter would have never been cultivated by AI.
No.
Never, never. So don't justify your small thinking by she would have written more volumes.
Yeah.
More is not better. So I think that's the conflict that's going on today. But I welcome the movement. I welcome putting a curfew on kids being at social media. I welcome that, 13-year-olds should not have a social media account. My kids don't. They're 14 and 11. I created a business for my son with memorabilia. He does basketball trading cards, and that's his business at 14. So he looks at, those kind of breaks and stuff, but I monitor that stuff. My daughter's not going to base herself. One out of three girls have body shaming issues at
Oh, man.
Instagram, and my daughter will never head down that road. I have strong, independent kids, and we'll continue nurturing that. But the yin to the yang is, yeah, I leverage technology. Here we are right now.
Yeah.
So technology serves its purpose, but it doesn't replace humanism. It doesn't replace this, Joe. It doesn't replace looking you in the eye.
Yeah.
To hear you, because of Zoom, I do this because I want to hear better. People think, what's wrong with you, Brandon? Because I do these things all the time. And I consciously have to look away because that's not you.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
synthetic, image being streamed over the internet. But what you're saying, it's just like being on the old school when we used to sit on a phone. You hear people. You
Yeah.
hear people. Yeah.
I
So that's how I compensate. See how I make that adjustment so I don't go down that rabbit hole. I want to hear what Joe's saying right now. So I need to close my eyes and lean in, physically lean in and bend my ear.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a professor in college. His name was Larry Ehrlich in one of my communication courses, and he spoke really low. And someone said, "Why aren't you speaking up?" And he was like, "I want you guys to pay attention. I want you to lean in, you know." And he was always really good. Always had good aphorisms and really good things to say. I always remember that. But those are the cats you remember. I mean, those are the ones that make an impact, you know?
Yeah. It's like, when I was a musician and everything went digital, first time I played with a drum machine, I'm going, what the hell is this? The hell is this?
Yep. Yep.
Worked for the 80s, right? Worked for the 80s, actually coming off disco. Then everybody woke up and we had grunge and Guns N' Roses and, things. People said, nah, man, music's got to be music. People need to play here. Let's stop this lip syncing, soundtracking stuff. And,
Yeah.
when people like, remember Milli Vanilli? They
Oh,
got
yeah.
caught for lip syncing and all that. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, things come in cycles, but I believe in humanity. I believe in people. And
Yep.
I think people are going to wake up to this new day and go, hey, man, time's up, pencils down.
Yeah.
Right? Put away the cell phones. Let's look each other in the eye and let's talk. Right?
Absolutely.
And that makes life beautiful. And that's what's going to save climate change and all the rest. I think there's an awakening. The world's going through a lot of changes. I think for the lack of call me a dreamer, but I think Mother Earth is going to say, you think your egos, you're going to ruin me? I'll take it back. Here's another tsunami. Here's another earthquake. Let me
Yep.
burn this shit to the ground and start over. You think you've been here? I've been here millions and millions of years. You've
Yeah.
been here for what, 50, 60 years, this
Yeah.
incarnation? How dare you?
Uh-huh.
So I believe that movement will happen, just like what we're seeing in the world with all the wars. I think there's more wars and stuff now than ever. There's all this social unrest because people are waking up. The yin to the yang, though. When I see that poor little, God, I watched that dude who shot up the supermarket in Buffalo,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? He was being sentenced. He looked like a zombie.
Mhm.
He's oblivious to
Mhm.
what he's done,
Mhm.
and he's oblivious to what he's going to face for the rest of his life. He's oblivious because he went down some rabbit hole of a conspiracy theory, that he went in some room on the internet. He should have been, thinking about, who am I going to take to the prom? That's the only thing he should have been thinking about, hanging out with his knucklehead friends. Instead,
Yeah.
he's writing a 180-page conspiracy manifesto. That should not be happening.
Yeah.
Should not
Absolutely.
happen. It's not. So I'm a huge advocate for that, is
Yeah.
that everything we do out there needs to be tempered with humanism. And it's going to take people like me and you and people that are going, hey, man, I grew up without this stuff.
Yeah.
My mom would send me outside at 9 a.m. when it was dark. We came home
Yeah.
right during the summer. And that was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. Well, you're just a boomer. That's not how it is today. Well, it doesn't mean today is better.
Yeah.
Right. And out of your young insecurity without any life experience. That's why I think a lot of young people speak that way, because deep at a heart level, they're very insecure and they're very freaked out. So
Yeah.
they need anchors. They need anchors, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I agree. What is it? You're obviously a highly driven person.
Mhm.
What is it that drives you? Every day you wake up, you have things that you want to do. What is it that propels and moves you to do and be you?
Hope, hope. When I say live your best life, not mine, not anybody else's. I'm a living example of the potential. Welfare and food stamps, I'm well. I've accumulated a lot of wealth financially, but it's never defined me. I still wear the same Converse I've always worn. I love taking great care of my family, my team, my community. I am rich because of learning who I am, understanding what my purpose is, that why. And it is live your best life. I'm 61. I live a good life. I look the way I do at 61 because I take care of myself. I don't smoke, I don't drink. And it's not like I'm some crazy nut. I love a good burger. Please put some barbecue ribs in front of me, because I think the yin to the yang is you have to have a balance. I will sit there and watch, Succession and watch 3 or 4 episodes while I'm working. I mean, so don't get that wrong. People think I'm some hermit sitting on a rock waiting for enlightenment. Life is a balance. Have a good glass of wine. Do what you need to do. But as long as you're clear on that, then when you wake up every day, it's not what you do, it's why you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that why is super important. And that's all I want to do. I want to help my kids live the best life. My wife has a credit card. She doesn't tell me anything. I just get a bill. I never question it. Where are we going? Our son's got a basketball tournament. Great. That's $5,000, $6,000 right there. Okay, no problem. Right?
Yeah.
No problem. And it's just funny to be in that position financially in life. Like, I just bought a Tesla and I paid cash for it. My first car was an $800 Dodge Dart my dad made me buy from him. A 68 Dodge Dart I bought from my dad. Yeah, 68 Dodge. I could climb in the hood and work on that engine. Now I have no engine. I had a
Yeah.
freaking thing that's a computer on wheels.
Yeah.
But to walk in and pay cash for things like that and not bat an eye, it's sometimes it's trippy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
trippy.
What are you the proudest of that you've done in your life up to this point? What is it that brings you the most pride?
Personally, being the best version of me. I mean, I was a womanizer. I was a victim from growing up. I was molested. I was in a foster home. My dad physically beat us. So I ran with that victim card. A kid's innocent. You don't ask to be beat by your parent. You don't ask to be molested at 8 by a cousin. You don't ask to be in a foster home. That's not your choice. So to be a victim very naturally was easy for me. So I ran that shit into my 20s, my 30s. I was never available for a relationship. I was always the guy that one woman was going to change and fix. Every time I'd get close to success, I would self-sabotage it so I could, perpetuate that victim mindset. I don't do that today. I deserve the best because I do and be my best. And personally, that's what I'm most proud of. I think getting it right, I've been married 17 years now, getting that right and being able to have a meaningful relationship of value is huge, is a huge accomplishment for me. Having kids that I love, that I care for, and I can provide for is huge. Because again, my dad was a single dad. He didn't have that resource. And I don't blame him for that. But to be able to do better than our parents did is, I think, an earmark of that. Having successful businesses where I have financial means to give back to the communities we live in, that's huge for us. We love giving to the school district. I have a team. Average tenure has been about 13 years they've worked for me, to be able to provide them and fulfill their dreams and help them buy homes and support their kids. That's all of it. All of it. All of it.
So as a music fan, musician, let's just kind of be fantastical here. If you could go back in time and catch a band live, a performer live, where are you going? Who are you going to see?
Man, I was a pop star in Asia. If you Google it, I had a record deal with Warner Brothers. So I'm deep. I'm deep. I would love to sit in an audience and hear Jaco Pastoria, man.
Yeah,
Stanley Clark. I started out as a jazz bass player. So those guys are just, what would that be like?
man.
What would it be like to sit there and play bass with Joe Pass? Holy shit. I mean, those kind of guys. So going even back, let's just sit there and hear Billie Holiday,
Yeah.
right? A guy that I saw that people never got his kudos was Little Jimmy Scott. If you remember a guy named
Oh,
Little Jimmy,
yeah. I've had him on the
right?
show. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people never knew of him, and I got to see him play live. And the
Wow.
first time I saw him play, I thought he was going to blow over. He was so skinny and frail, but when he opened his mouth, and then the last time I saw little Jimmy Scott, he was in a wheelchair. And then he
Yeah.
died shortly after that. He's somebody, I would love to hear Melody Gardot live. She's another great jazz
Yeah.
singer.
Yep.
I saw Prince 4 or 5 times. I think Prince was way ahead of
Yeah.
everything and
Yeah.
everybody as a musician. So Prince, anyone who's not here, I'd love to see Jimi Hendrix. I never
Yeah.
saw Jimi Hendrix, but I think I did. And in the late 60s, early 70s, we had this thing because I lived in San Francisco. So we had Hippie Hill, and everybody was naked on Hippie Hill. That was the big thing. I know I saw Santana, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Starship, Eric Clapton when he was Cream,
Wow.
because she was with Big Brother and the holding company. So I don't know if Jimmy was there for that, but I know I saw because Santana lived in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Jefferson Airplane lived in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Everybody congregated in San Francisco, and I was a little kid on roller skates in the early 70s. Just we lived on hate. I lived with my mom briefly one summer and was a
Yeah.
trip, but that's what that was all about. Everybody was
Yeah.
everywhere. So there's a lot of people I'd love to see.
Yeah. Well, you saw a lot of people. So
I do.
let's get to the essence of you. Everyone has a perception of you, that you have all these pockets and bubbles of people, but ultimately you're running the show. Family, friends,
Mhm,
fans,
mhm,
colleagues, clients.
mhm.
What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Man, I'm just another schmo trying to get through life. I want to wake up each day. I want to be happy, and happy is being balanced. I just, I'm very blessed. I think I'm a very grateful person. Any day above poverty is a good day for me. And so I have a very deep sense of gratitude. I was watching this documentary on the Bee Gees, and when he said that one line, Barry Gibb said, "I have more years behind me than I do in front of me." So I don't want to wake up each day and squander it being negative or pissed off or having resentments or, I want to wake up in love, and that's a choice. I want to wake up in gratitude, and that's a choice.
Yeah.
It drives my family nuts. By the time my feet hit the ground, I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm playing music, I'm kissing everybody, and they're like, "Papa, chill out, man." But I want to create that state though, right, Joe? I want to be in this place every day that I'm in that vibe, for me. And so there's a certain set of systems and processes that I go through to cultivate that.
Yeah.
And once I do, no matter what you put in front of me, I don't care. I don't care what it is. I can process it in a positive way because I don't believe life happens to me. I believe it happens for me.
Yeah.
So no matter how challenging that might be, Joe, to be in that, to be here, and like I say to my wife when she gets, on her rants, we could be in Ukraine right now. What does that got to do with anything? Well, it could always be a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take my challenges. I'm going to count my blessings because I don't want to squander it. I
Yeah.
used to think you had to be old to die. You don't have to be old to die. You could
Yeah.
die at birth. You could die of cancer at 9. We're all just one phone call away.
Yeah.
And that's not a morbid thing. That's just like that's the truth.
It's true.
So I want to wake up and live it. So
Yeah.
gratitude, love, those are things I cultivate and I nurture every day.
Absolutely. I can tell. What if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, anything pertaining to you and your world, where is the best place
Mhm,
for them to go?
mhm. I have a podcast, Success Never Sleeps, and Mindful Meditation. So that's available at Apple and all the different podcast platforms. I have a best-selling book, Learn Grow, which is at Amazon. I have a TED Talk that's out there called Happy on Purpose. If they want to watch that, you can follow me at Instagram. You can go to brannonbeliso.com. Just Google my name. There's tons of stuff.
Got a great name, man. Brannon Beliso. It just comes right off the tongue well.
Thank you.
It's a
Like,
wonderful name.
well,
Brandon,
Joe
man,
is a
you're
good Italian name.
yeah, it is a good
I
Italian
was
name.
thinking
Yeah.
it. Dimino. Is it Dimino?
Domino.
Dimino?
Yeah.
Dimino? Yes.
100%.
Can't get more Italian. Like I said, I just got back from Boston and I
Yeah.
was speaking out there, and the clients took me to an old Italian restaurant,
Oh
man. And
man.
we were eating bread. I'm going, we have sourdough in San Francisco, and this bread is like really, really good, right? I had some
Yeah.
chicken
Yeah.
parm, right? It's like, oh, so it was just very cool. They were
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah.
Mazzola. Last name was Mazzola. And they
Okay.
took me to an Italian restaurant. We were just chilling, and you can just feel the vibe. It's so old, right? Boston's
Yeah.
one of the oldest original colonies. And
Yeah.
I think there's something beautiful about that too. Just to be in that state where I can embrace everything,
Yeah.
without judgment, without opinion, without criticism. Because that chicken parm tastes a million times better because I wasn't sitting and going, West Coast versus East Coast, right?
Right.
I was
Right.
just there. I was just there.
In
I
the
was just,
moment.
yeah, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're a powerhouse, man. I feel it. I appreciate you opening up a little bit of your world. This was some good jazz improv, man. We got it out.
Sure. Joe, that's what I say to people when I do a podcast like this and we're riffing. I say, you know what? It's like two good jazz musicians just sitting down and going, what key are we in? Oh, E flat. Great. Let's run.
Let's
Boom.
go.
And we're off.
Let's
Right.
go.
And we're off. And it's just the crescendos. It's this, right? You never
Uh-huh.
know who's going to solo next. You don't know whoever's going to take the lead. And it's just that ebb and flow of it. And it is. I've said that
Yeah.
verbatim. It's
I
like
love
two
it.
jazz musicians just riffing.
Just
I
feel
dig
it.
it.
That's it.
I
Just
dig it.
get that soul swimming. I love it, man.
I
Hey,
like it.
this has been great. Hey, man, more power to you. Thank you for opening up your world. I appreciate it,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Joe, for having me.
You bet. Cheers.